Hello, everyone. We are going to get started here in just a moment. In today's live stream, we are going to really dig into the question that comes up in a lot of your job searches. And that question is what to do if you're not getting job interviews or job offers. So, if that is your current situation right now, you will definitely want to stick around. We are going to cover a couple of really common questions that come up. And first of all, we're going to cover the mistake that a lot of you make, which is playing the numbers game in your job search. And I want to help you understand why that might not be the best strategy. The next thing we're going to touch on is why you are maybe not standing out from other candidates. And as a result, you're not getting those job interviews. And the third thing we're going to cover is how UX recruiters and hiring managers and people involved in that, how those people form first impressions about you to help you hopefully stand out more. So, if you are applying to jobs and not getting interviews, or you're going to interviews and not getting job offers, this is going to be really, really valuable to you. I just want to do a quick tech check to make sure that everyone can see me and hear me okay. And side note, if you are joining us on LinkedIn, I can see your comments, but there are going to be a few moments when I paste links into the chat and they're not going to show up on LinkedIn. It's just a limitation of this software, but I'll make sure to read it out so that you can write down that URL or type it in. Yes, everyone, this is going to be recorded. So whether you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn or even Twitter, perhaps, you can come back to the exact link you're on right now and watch it later. So if you need to leave, no problem. We're also going to save a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A, and we'll probably save about 10 minutes for that. So if you are applying to jobs and not getting interviews, or you're getting interviews and not getting job offers, this is going to be really valuable to you. And if you think this would be valuable to anyone else that you know, feel free to send them this link so they can join us or watch it later. Before we get started, though, I want to just let you know that on next Thursday, June 9th, I am teaching a live workshop and an open house for a program I run called Career Strategy Lab, which is a UX job search accelerator. So it's kind of like a startup incubator, but for your UX job search. And next week at that workshop and open house, I'm going to teach you this framework I have called the product of you, which is going to help you apply UX and product design principles to your resume, to your portfolio, to your job search, etc., so that you can get more interviews and hopefully more job offers. So if you want to come to that workshop, you have to fill out an application because we want to make sure you're at the right stage that we think this is going to be valuable to you. So I'm going to paste the link to the workshop application. It's totally free. And you guys can go to that link if you're interested in applying or just learning more. And if you're on LinkedIn, the URL is careerstrategylab.com/workshop. It won't show up in the chat because the software just can't send my chat messages over to LinkedIn, but that's fine. All right, so before we get started, I'm really curious who is here to get a little bit of sense of what you do and what stage you're at in your career. So in the chat, I see some of you have already done this. Let me know, what are you doing right now? Are you currently working in UX? Are you studying UX? Or I think those are the two main categories. So let me know which one you are doing. And then I have a follow-up question, but I'm curious. So let's see in the chat where you guys are at in your career. I know we have a lot of people who are currently working in UX, because last time I did this, we had a lot of what I call career climbers, people already working in UX. We also had a lot of career switchers, who are people that are coming into UX from another industry, like architecture, journalism, interior design, psychology. Academic research is a big one right now, where switchers are coming into UX from academia. And then we have those career launchers who, maybe you just graduated from college or university and you're seeking your first job, and it happens to be in user experience. So, okay, I see a lot of people currently working in UX. I see some graphic designers switching into UX, multiple graphic designers, recent grad starting the job search. Diego, what did you graduate with? I'm curious. Okay. Bunch of people studying UX, architecture to UX. I see that like every single week. Architects switching to UX. Okay, more people switching from interior design. Very interesting. I wonder why that's happening. All right, so like I thought, we would have a lot of switchers and a lot of climbers, which is very exciting. Now, a follow-up question for some of you who are currently applying to jobs, or, even think about a past job search. I am curious, what kind of the success rate of your applications were. So if you applied to more than 50 jobs and didn't get an interview, let me know in the chat. Because like I said in the beginning, I don't want you guys playing the numbers game in your job search, because I think that's a waste of time. And we're going to get into some more reasons why. But if you did apply to more than 50 jobs and didn't get interviews or job offers, let us know in the chat. And I'm not saying this to like call you out. I'm really saying it because I know many of you applied to way more than 40, 50 jobs and didn't get interviews. And the thing is, I don't want you to feel bad about this. I want you to realize you're not the only one that's doing this, but there is a better way. And I really, really, really hope that at the end of this, you have like little Post-it notes on your desk with some really helpful reminders so you don't play this numbers game in the future. Okay, so we see a lot of people. Okay, Diego studied fashion design and did a UX boot camp. Okay, cool. A lot of people are saying they have a 0% success rate. We're going to fix that. Corey said 8 months of applying 100 applications, 3 interviews, no job offer. Many of you said more than 50% or 50 applications. Okay, so let's dive into this, because I don't want to waste any of your time. I'm going to pull up my notes here, so I might not look like I'm looking at the camera, but I wrote down a bunch of notes that I wanted to share with you guys. So the first thing I wanted to cover was, how does this numbers game that you're all playing, because you told me in the chat, what is the impact and kind of side effect of a lot of the numbers games? So when I hear that you guys are applying to 50, 100, 200 roles, a couple of mistakes really come to mind. And I think the first kind of mistake or risk that comes to mind is the time that you are spending to even find these jobs to begin with, right? If you think to yourself, you applied to 50 jobs, how many hours or minutes did it take you to find each of those jobs? And then how many hours and minutes did it take you to apply to each of those jobs? Even if it was just 1 hour for each job and you applied to 50 jobs, that's 50 hours. That's more than a 5-day work week, right? That is a lot of time. And I'm saying this because I want to help you kind of think like a product manager and start to think about the ROI, the return on investment of the time you are putting into this. Does that make sense? And have you ever thought about it this way, right? Have you ever thought to yourself, oh, I never actually thought to myself, if it takes me an hour to find each job and an hour to apply to each job for 50 jobs, that equates to 100 hours. That's more than half a month of a job search, right? So let's dig into this a little bit more. When you are playing that numbers game and applying to tons of jobs, there is that time element that I just explained to you. And I think the main takeaway I want you to realize is that those 100 hours that you spent finding and applying to 50 jobs, that's 100 hours that you could have spent doing other things. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, well, what are those other things? And one thing that I'm really adamant about that we teach inside Career Strategy Lab is the idea that when it comes to your job search, we do not want you to focus on platforms, meaning spending hundreds of hours on LinkedIn jobs, Indeed, Glassdoor, et cetera, finding all these jobs to apply to. Because we know you are way more likely to get hired through people. And by that, I mean connections you make with people in communities or reaching out, cold emailing or messaging recruiters and hiring managers that you see are posting because they tweeted about it or they put it on LinkedIn. So if I was writing down post-it notes today, one of my post-it notes might say people over platforms when it comes to my job search. Just based on everyone that gets hired inside Career Strategy Lab, oftentimes we see there was a strong component of people or relationships. So people found out about a job because they were in a community and someone mentioned it, or people found a job because someone posted about it on LinkedIn and then they sent a message to that recruiter or hiring manager and said, "Hey, I applied to this job. I just wanted to let you know that I applied. I think I'm a great candidate because of X, Y, and Z." Something very simple like that. So the numbers game sucks up a lot of time, and you have to think to yourself, I could probably be spending some of those 100 hours building relationships with people that will be valuable in my job search. But beyond time, I think there's another thing that you guys don't think about when it comes to the consequence or side effects of playing the numbers game. And this kind of leads us into the topic of imposter syndrome, right? You see imposter syndrome being discussed all of the time on LinkedIn, Twitter, Medium, etc. And let me know in the chat, maybe even this morning, you logged on to LinkedIn and you saw someone write a post about their story of how they had applied to 100 jobs and didn't get an interview, or they went to an interview and they didn't get a job offer. It's kind of this style of like, I got rejected kind of posts on LinkedIn. Do you guys know what I mean? I feel like it's kind of a theme of posts that we are seeing. And the point I'm trying to make is that the more jobs you apply to, guess what? Just because of the numbers, the more rejections you are going to get. And I think, there's this cycle of apply to a job, get rejected, feel bad about yourself, your confidence goes down the tube, you start to think you're not good enough. So you redo your portfolio and you redo your resume. And then you think, maybe I shouldn't even be in UX. Maybe I should go back to being an architect. And you get into this like spiral of rejection and negativity and self-criticism. And if I were to think about where is this coming from, I think one of the main areas this is coming from is because you're playing the numbers game. Because like I said, just through sheer math, the more jobs you apply to, more than likely, the more rejections you are going to get. I'm curious, I got to pull up the chat and see if you guys are with me, right? And I really, really think that this imposter syndrome is largely driven from this numbers game that you are doing, right? Nasli said it's cyclical madness. And Nabila said, oh my God, this is also relatable. I feel so much of this. Sarah Doody, secretly a mind reader. Yeah, well, I am a user researcher. But But okay, this is resonating. And so it's not just about your time. This is affecting like your like emotional and mental health. Let's face it, right? We see these posts. It doesn't take like a rocket scientist to read these posts on LinkedIn and think to myself, especially as I think about this as a product manager, if you're applying to 100 jobs and you're not getting interviews and this is making you feel like you want to quit, maybe we should not apply to so many jobs. So I think your next question for me is probably, well, what is the alternative? And before we get to that, I want to make another point that I almost forgot, but the risk of applying to so many jobs is that there's a couple of them. First of all, in your job search, what we teach and what we see really works is when you apply to less jobs, but you are more intentional about the jobs you apply to. So, what do I mean by that? Number one, you're going to apply to less jobs, but you're going to apply to the right jobs. So, a lot of you, and because now you guys have said I'm a mind reader, a lot of you apply to jobs without reading the job description. And I know this because I do UX recruiting now. And the people that applied to some jobs I just posted about clearly did not read the job description. And what you're doing is in your rush to go for volume of jobs applied to, you just rely on the job title. And that's not a good thing to rely on because half the time job titles don't really align with what you'd actually be doing. So that's going to challenge number one. Another thing, though, is that when you apply to 100 jobs, you are not able to customize or tailor or tweak your resume, your portfolio, your cover letter, etc., to those jobs you are applying to. And I know based on the people who get hired from our Career Strategy Lab program, one thing they all have in common is that the they all say they took the time to tweak, and we're talking like small changes to the resume, portfolio, etc., so that it really, really, really matches what is in that job description. But let me know in the chat, if you applied to 50 jobs, did you have the time or energy to make a custom resume for each one of those jobs? And if you did, then guess what? If you applied to 50 jobs, instead of spending 100 hours, maybe you spent 200 hours because it took you that extra time to customize the cover letter, portfolio, resume, etc., right? I'm super curious. Okay, I'm popping into the chat to see what's happening here. So we're still having a lot of you talking about how many jobs you applied to. You're saying that you played the numbers game. And the thing is, here's the thing. You play the numbers game because no one has taught you a better way to do this. And you just think this is the only way. And I am here to tell you it's not the only way. And I can confidently say that because I see so many people get hired by doing the opposite, by focusing on people, not platforms. Okay, a lot of you, yeah, Corey said there's no way I could make a custom resume for 100 jobs I applied to. Exactly. My point exactly, right? It would just not be sustainable. So that is another reason why I'm really not a fan of this whole numbers game thing. Another thing though is that the more jobs you apply to, I think the more you are lenient on what you're looking for in a dream job. So the more jobs you apply to, the more I think you're willing to compromise. Because if you're getting no interview, no interview, no interview for like 4 weeks, and then you all of a sudden get an interview, you're so excited about getting an interview that you are more likely to say yes to that interview, even though it may not tick all your boxes, whether that's you really want to work remotely, but it's not remote. So you're going to do it anyway because you're so frustrated and mad that you've had 4 weeks of rejections that now you're just going to say yes because it's the first interview that came up. So, kind of the point I'm trying to make is the more jobs you apply to, the more likely that eventually, when you do get an interview or job offer, it's probably not going to be for the job that you're really excited about. And then if you take that job, you are more likely to 6 months, 8 months down the road, think to yourself, man, this is not what I was looking for, but I kind of compromised. So I'm curious. We're going to move on to the next topic, but numbers game. We know based on the chat, a lot of you have been playing the numbers game, but if you were to write down something on your virtual or real life post it note about the numbers game, what is one thing that would go on that post it note? Let me know in the chat because I don't want you guys really gambling with your job search. And I know it seems counterintuitive, but if you apply to less jobs, put more effort and intentionality into the materials you use and finding the right jobs, you are going to get more interviews. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. So, what's on your virtual post-it notes? Let me know in the chat, and I am going to look at the chat here. All right, let's see. There's a little bit of a delay here, so we're going to wait and see what comes in for your virtual post-it notes. But I'm seeing some of you say, yeah, to make a custom resume or cover letter, it's like 15 to 30 minutes per job. Yep, Lauren. Okay, Marie says people over platforms would be on my post-it note. Yep. Okay, Louise said you got one phone interview and then was rejected. It can be disheartening because you are willing to take anything. Exactly. Like it makes sense, you know? This is why I really, 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 really don't want you guys playing the numbers game. So, the other thing I would say is, like, clearly, we can't always wait around for our dream job. So, there've definitely been times in my own career when I took a job because I knew I needed to get a job because my other job ended for whatever reason. And so I really don't intend for this to come across as, you never need to make a compromise or you're never going to compromise in your career because sometimes you will, but the overarching point I'm trying to make is this notion of the numbers game and how much time it's taking and how much it's affecting your like mental and emotional health, and that it doesn't have to be that hard. I just want to make that caveat because I don't obviously mean like you're never going to compromise in your career, because there's plenty of times when you might need to do that because of life reasons, right? Okay. Numbers equals more rejections. Yep. Okay. Let's see. Someone else said on their post-it note, it would say, be natural. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. Tweak your resume and your cover letter. Okay. What are some more? Another one said, where'd they go? All right, let's move on. But I love this discussion and just the idea of not playing the numbers game and being more intentional, right? Oh, I love what was said just now. Desperate energy brings the worst. Stay confident and selective. I need that on my post-it note. All right, let's move on to the next topic, which is why, if you're not getting interviews, why you may not be standing out from other candidates in your job search, and how I believe many of you are selling yourselves short, meaning you're not doing a good job at communicating who you are, what you do, your skills and experience. And again, I say this through looking at the people in my Career Strategy Lab program, but also seeing the resumes, portfolios, LinkedIn profiles, cover letters of people applying to jobs that I am recruiting for. And side note, we don't have any open roles right now, so don't send me your resume and ask me to get you hired. But I want to look at why you may not be standing out from other candidates. So one of the main things that I think happens is that a lot of people really lack the basic skill of writing professionally. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to say it because I see this mistake. Grammar, spelling mistakes. Another thing that comes up, especially on resumes, is a lot of resumes sound like job descriptions. It's just a big list of responsibilities. And if you think of the people hiring you or thinking about hiring you, they don't want to read that you were responsible for conducting user research because that is very, very vague. That is not specific. So, a better way to talk about research experience you have is not saying, I was responsible for doing user research at my company, right? If we were sitting here having a conversation, I would say to you, well, tell me more about this research. Like, what type of research did you do? Was it quantitative? Was it qualitative? What part of the product was it for? Was it kind of discovery research? Was it usability testing? Was it like ongoing surveys? So that's one more way to get more specific about I was responsible for doing user research. Another thing you could do is add in the element of like scope, meaning how much research did you do? Were you doing a research project where you interviewed 3 people or 300 people? That is a very different skill set. And that is a very different example of your ability to do research, right? Um, so that is an example of how you can take your very responsibility driven resume or LinkedIn profile and go a little bit deeper, because those examples I just gave you are what people want to hear. And sometimes I use this analogy. If you followed me for a while, maybe you remember, but I use this analogy of you need to kind of think like a lawyer when it comes to your job search. And by that, I mean, you're kind of the lawyer, and the jury is the people involved in UX hiring, right? Because they're going to decide if you get an interview or not. And what do lawyers do? They bring really solid evidence. And that evidence is largely what helps the jury determine the case, right? And so if we're using this analogy, I'm a big analogy person, if you didn't know, but if we're using this analogy, the evidence here is exactly what we just went through. And the evidence needs to be really specific, really detailed, and not just, I was responsible for doing user research. So I want you to think to yourself and maybe let us know in the chat, are you making this mistake where you are writing about your skills and experience in a way that is really, really vague and maybe only scratching the surface? Because if I'm looking at resume 1 and resume 2, and resume 1 says I was responsible for user research, and resume 2 goes into the level of detail that I just went into a few minutes ago, which one is standing out way more? It's resume 2, right? So are you realizing, later this afternoon or something like that, if you were to read your resume or your LinkedIn profile, are you only scratching the surface? And do you need to go and do a little refresh based on that example and make your resume on LinkedIn less responsibility driven and more detail and results driven? So let's see here. Haley said, I feel like I started to do this, but I could go deeper. Okay, hopefully, Haley, now with that example, you can rewatch this and rewind it and go back to that example I gave and have a framework for going into more detail. But if you want like a really simple framework, a lot of people just say what they did, right? I was responsible for user research. Well, remember back to like journalism, right? The 5 W's and H: who, what, where, when, why, how. Those are great questions to try and prompt you as you write your resume or LinkedIn or portfolio content. Let's see. So someone said, you really have to be specific. I've had hiring managers ask about very specific methods on my resume and what it looked like in projects. Exactly. Let's see. Where's here? Someone said, I was told that a good description includes responsibility plus scope plus outcome equals good description. Would you agree with that? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I just did, right? And the other thing I would say is sometimes you cannot always talk about results, right? You can't always say, I did this thing and the company made $1 million, or I redesigned the checkout and the e-commerce website saw a decrease in like shopping cart abandonment of 50%, right? Sometimes you don't have those numbers. Why? Because maybe that thing you designed didn't launch yet. Maybe you left the company and you don't have that information. So don't stress out and agonize if you don't have a beautiful like results or outcome thing for every single bullet point. People ask me that all the time, and it's not always possible. Okay, someone said, definitely could use way more evidence and details in my resume. Exactly. Um, let's see. I want to go down to the bottom because I missed stuff. Okay, you guys liked my example. Awesome. Okay, Colleen said results driven equals show me the money. Yeah. So, like I said, if your resume is super responsibility driven and someone is looking at it right next to a resume that is answering not just what you did, but how you did it, why you did it, how big was that research project, maybe different software you used, different methods, etc., that is going to stand out far beyond just I was responsible for creating wireframes. All right, I just want to go through my notes here and say, make sure I did not miss anything. The one thing I want to point out is, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed because in all of your career materials, meaning your resume, your portfolio, your LinkedIn, etc., once you do a good job at writing about it in one place, you can kind of just repurpose it, right? So if you do a really good job on your resume, maybe just focus on your resume first. Then after your resume is feeling really specific and like a solid, awesome piece of evidence, then guess what? It's largely just a cut and paste activity to go update your LinkedIn. So I know a lot of you are feeling overwhelmed, but if you can invest the time to really do that great resume, then in a matter of an hour, you're updating your LinkedIn. And it always really amazes me when people apply to jobs and their resume and their LinkedIn are very, very different, because that says to me, like, they aren't super detail oriented, or they maybe got lazy and like only did their resume and didn't update their LinkedIn, or vice versa. But to me, there's no excuse for, once you have a good resume, to not have an awesome LinkedIn profile, because you can repurpose like most of that link or resume content over to your LinkedIn. So the other thing to think about when it comes to why you might not be standing out from other candidates is this idea that, if I think of the materials that you need to apply to a job, I think you need a resume, you need a LinkedIn profile, and you probably are going to need some examples of your work, meaning a presentation, a portfolio, whatever the heck you want to call it. One mistake I see a lot of you make is that you put so much energy into, let's say, your portfolio, and then it comes time to do your resume, and you're like so tired and so burnt out and so frustrated, and you just want to start applying to jobs, that you just slap together your resume really quickly and you kind of rush it. And if I were to look at it, I would say to you, don't apply to jobs with this resume. Like, what are you thinking? So the point I'm trying to make is, I want you to ask yourself, did I maybe put so much time into my resume or so much time into my portfolio that, if I'm honest with myself, I probably need to do a refresh to my resume, because I really only spent half an hour on it or something, and I rushed it so I could apply to this job. And I'm saying this because you can never guarantee what someone is going to look at first when you apply to a job. And by that, I mean, we don't know if they're going to look at your resume or click on your LinkedIn or read a little cover letter you wrote or looked at your portfolio. And so we need all of those to be an excellent, excellent entry point so that no matter which one someone looks at, they are getting an awesome first impression about you. So I want to ask you to put in the chat, do you think, number one, that you need to go back and make your content more specific? But second question, do you think that maybe you made the mistake of putting so much time and energy into one thing, your resume or your LinkedIn, that like your resume definitely isn't up to par? So let me know in the chat, because like this is very important, because as I said, we don't know what someone is going to look at first. And so we need every one of those to be as awesome as awesome as possible. That's hard to say. Awesome as possible, a piece of evidence, so that they look at it and they get a really strong first impression about who you are and what you do. All right, so let's go down in the chat and see. You guys are like saying yes, totally agree. Okay, see, I am a mind reader. Let's see. Okay, someone said no one is going to read a super long resume. So we don't have time to get into the specifics of like exactly how to make a resume, but if you go to my linked or YouTube profile, YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/Sarah Doody, you will see a bunch of resume playlists. And I recommend we really have two versions of our resume. We have a human-friendly version, and we have what I call the ATS, or applicant tracking system version, because we know there are two really types of users of your resume. There is the resume that literally a human reads, like if you email them and say, hey, so-and-so told me about the role you have, here's my resume, etc. A human is going to read that resume. The ATS, or applicant tracking system resume, is a resume that is slightly optimized so that it has more keywords and increasing the chances that when you apply to a job through like a job search site, your resume and application is going into a giant database, and that database is going through your resume to then tell the recruiter, like, based on this resume and the keywords and everything, it looks like these 5 candidates are really strong. So it's like algorithm, right? So applicant tracking system version is more optimized for keywords and such. It's also laid out differently. Like applicant tracking system resumes should not be 2 columns. They should be 1 column. They shouldn't have cute fonts and logos that you made for yourself, because that will like be very difficult for the algorithm and the like tech to read it. Whereas a human-friendly version resume, we optimize that so that the person can easily skim, scan, etc. that resume. And so it's things like how you format bullet points, the fonts, colors, etc. But we're not going to teach about resumes today. Go over to my YouTube and find the resume playlists. All right, so you guys are saying you definitely think you need to make some tweaks to your LinkedIn and resume because you prioritize one over the other. Exactly. Okay. What else are you guys saying? All right. Yes, someone is being very helpful. Thank you, Sarah Cooper, for posting some links to my resume articles and YouTube things, etc. All right, let's move on. I want to save a few minutes for questions. We kind of just already covered the third topic, which was how recruiters and hiring managers form first impressions. And the point that I really wanted to make was, we don't know the order that they look at your materials. So you need to make sure each of your materials are doing a really, really, really good job. And you can do that through what we talked about maybe 10 minutes ago, which is improving the quality of how you write about your skills and experience. So it is not just, I was responsible for blah, 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 blah. And it is giving examples of the things you literally were responsible for doing. Okay. I see we have a lot of questions, so I want to stop there. But before we do, I want to just recap a few takeaways. So the takeaways that I wrote down that I hope you remember from this are the numbers game, why the numbers game is a bad strategy because it takes up a lot of time. That time could be used for building relationships because we're going to focus on people, not platforms in our job search. And the impact, the side effects of the numbers game, not just on how much time it sucks from your life, but really how I really, really believe it is one of the leading drivers of this barrage of imposter syndrome, negativity, self-worth, not good enough. I want to quit UX and go back to accounting or something like that. So no more numbers game, hopefully. And then that next takeaway is really the idea of thinking like a lawyer and thinking of how you talk about what you've worked on and not just focusing on responsibilities, focusing on what you did, why you did it, how you did it, what happened, etc., and telling the whole story, right? That's what we did in those examples. And then remembering that first impressions, we don't know where the first impression is made, whether it's your resume, your LinkedIn, your portfolio, your cover letter, whatever. And that is why we need to give so much attention to all of them equally and not spend 90% of our time redesigning our portfolio for the fifth time and then just spending 20 minutes slapping together a resume without really thinking about it and being very strategic about it. So I'm curious if you have any takeaways that you have that I did not cover, because those were the ones I hope are on your Post-it notes. But I'm sure you maybe have other things that I said that you're thinking, wow, I never thought about it that way before. Or I definitely, like Nabila said, I definitely need to make an ATS version of my resume. Right. A lot of people I talk to don't realize the value of having a optimized for algorithms and optimized for humans. Very, 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 very important. Let's see what other updates or things you guys have as takeaways. All right, I don't see any more. I see a lot of questions. So I'm going to go back and read the chat after this as well, because I totally have missed it. I see we're posting to a big group me. I don't know what that group is, but I will have to check it out later. All right, I want to go to some questions. So I'm going to scroll back through and kind of just randomly choose some, and I'm going to try and make sure. Okay, I like this one. We're going to do this one first. Let's bring it onto the screen, which is we go, well, how do we do it? Whoops. I've pressed something and I don't know how to get away from it. Okay, we're going to answer this one, which is from Nicholas. And it says, what's a good way to attract recruiters? So in your job search, you have to not just think about what can I do to have recruiters show up on my LinkedIn inbox. You also have to think about how can I find recruiters or hiring managers who are hiring that I can reach out to. So Nicholas, it's got to be a two-way street, because so many people think that getting hired is just going into LinkedIn and turning on that open to work and like crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. And that's when your job search is going to take forever. And more importantly is when you only rely on like people coming to you, I think it's going to increase the chances that you're going to have a lot of people come to you with roles that probably are not like an amazing fit. Because let's face it, we've all had a situation where people slide into your DMs on LinkedIn or wherever and say, "Hey, I'm hiring for this position. I think you'd be great for it." And in my case, it's like a graphic designer job or like a front end developer job. And I think to myself, for goodness sake, like, did you not read my LinkedIn profile? What made you think I am a graphic designer? What made you think I'm a front end developer, let alone even working for a job? Because actually, I'm the founder and CEO of Career Strategy Lab, and I'm not looking to go work at a company, you know? So, Nicholas, two answers here. To attract recruiters, the number one thing I think you can do is do a refresh of your LinkedIn profile. And the number one thing you could do on your profile is to optimize your LinkedIn headline. Now, I have a video about this on my YouTube, which I'm going to find. Hold on. YouTube, LinkedIn headline, Sarah Doody. I should have these like bookmarked or something. But watch this. How do I go back to the chat? Okay. This is the video. Tell me if you guys can see this when I post it in the chat. Are you seeing the link I just posted? Just like after one or two people say yes, everyone stop. Like not all 70 people need to say yes, but I'm just curious. Okay, I think it went to YouTube. So, Nicholas, rewrite your LinkedIn headline, number one. That's how you could attract people. But to my second point of how to find jobs and reverse it and go find them, guess what? I have a video for that. You need to watch this video. This one is how to find people hiring. Yeah, if you're on LinkedIn, you're not going to see these links that I'm posting because this software I'm using does not post my comments to LinkedIn, unfortunately. There's nothing I can do about that. So go to my LinkedIn or go to my YouTube channel and you're going to see the videos. Okay, so Nicholas, hopefully that answers your question. Let's see here. I got to scroll back to the top here. Okay. I want to scroll back. There were some good ones up here. Okay, next question was from Geese, and Geese said, "What do you think about including a list of soft skills to the resume?" So, this kind of goes back to writing the bullet points, right? I think that those bullet points should be opportunities to highlight some of your skills and experience. So you might still have a list of skills, but I think you want to be thinking about those bullet points and think, what skill is each of those bullet points representing? But one thing I see people do, which I think is a bit of a mistake, is they list skills that are just kind of table stakes. So they say things like, "I'm skilled at brainstorming," or "I'm skilled at sketching." So, I mean, some people obviously are better at sketching than others, but I think that as UX people, like, everyone should be skilled at brainstorming or sketching. So I would be careful about soft skills because just seeing a list of skills like brainstorming, sketching, critical thinking, like it's somewhat meaningless. But I think if you show me in a bullet point how you were, what was one of the examples? um, involved in sketching or brainstorming. And obviously that's going to come through in your portfolio too. But I would be careful that your list of skills does not become like a list of 30 things because then it's too much to read. Like I'm probably not going to read it, you know? So I keep the skills very small. and try and work some of those words into your bullet points, especially when we're thinking about optimizing your resume for the applicant tracking system or those algorithms. All right, I want to find a couple of more questions to answer. Let's see here. Oh God, my favorite question. Okay, so this one is from someone on LinkedIn, and they said, everyone says resume should be short and experiences about the job we are applying. I can't put all the experience about different jobs on one resume. And I'm guessing part of this question that maybe got cut off or kind of excluded was you're trying to keep your resume to one page. So 100% disagree. I say this at least once a week. For some reason, not everyone, a lot of people think your resume needs to be one page. I believe totally false. Why is it risky to make your resume only one page? Here's why. Because if you try and make your resume one page, what's going to happen? Number one, you are going to leave off information, and then your bullet points are going to be very vague, and you're going to say, I was responsible for user research and not go into detail. Number two, you are going to likely bump down the font size to make your resume fit on one page. And why is that bad? Because the human reading your resume will have a hard time reading it, skimming it, scanning it if you bump the font size down to 8 points to make it fit. Another thing that'll happen is the layout of your resume, you will end up smushing and cramming information together so that it will be very difficult for someone to skim, scan, etc. that resume, and then they're not going to look at it. So don't make your resume one page. Is there an ideal number of pages? It depends on your experience. If you've been working for 15 years, maybe your resume is 3 pages, a resume that is only one page, but it's all smushed together and like so dense, that's a lot harder to read than a resume that is 3 pages and has really nice balance of text, it's well laid out, etc. I don't think your resume should be 10 pages, but honestly, like, you kind of have to use your own critical thinking, but you got to think of the user of your resume. So, anonymous LinkedIn user, hopefully that answers your question. Let's go back to the top here. Probably going to do 2 more questions. So, I want to just go back to the top and see if we missed any way up top here. Yeah, if you want resume help, just Google my name and resumes and you'll get so much stuff. Seriously. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, another person from LinkedIn said, will career transitioners or switchers still attract recruiters if we optimize our LinkedIn headlines? So if you go to that video where I posted tips to do your LinkedIn headline, I think people have commented and said they did what I said to do in that video of updating your LinkedIn headline, and they had more people reaching out for more relevant roles. And if they're not there in the comments, then I'm mixing it up, because I definitely have received private messages on LinkedIn, emails people have sent me, which said, I did what you said to do in that video, and I got more interviews, or some people even found jobs and got hired. So yes, you can't only have a really good LinkedIn profile and the rest of your profile is like terrible, but if you are trying to optimize it, start with the headline, but watch the whole video, because I literally give you examples of, like, here is a bad headline, here is why it's bad, here is a good headline, here's why it works. Okay, so do it. I don't like to waste your time. So these videos are super actionable. So definitely go watch it and then report back. Let me know how it goes. All right. So let's see. Oh, Sarah Cooper said, Yeah, you gotta have two versions of the resume, ATS and human. Sarah said, you gotta use them both. Let's see. Okay, Sarah said, you use both the resumes in a couple of ways. And when the application asks for a resume, use that ATS version because more than likely it's going into a big database and the algorithm is going to parse out which applicants it thinks is best to save those recruiting teams time, right? Then if you are emailing someone or messaging someone on LinkedIn and you legit know it's a person, send them your human resume, right? It's Guys, this is UX. It's like the user of your resume. So that's where all this is coming from. All right. One more question. Let's see. Yeah, Sarah said, I literally used to have my resume at 10 point. And I think what you're saying is in another chat message is that you bumped it up. Yeah, don't shove it all on one page. No good. Okay. Let's see here. One more question. Let's do Charmaine's. Charmaine is a career climber, meaning has been working in UX for a while. And you said I have loads of work experience, but crammed my first 15 years into my resume. The rest is on LinkedIn. Is that okay? So, Charmaine, based on what I taught already today, let's go back to that piece about not knowing where they're going to look first, right? We don't know if they're going to hit your LinkedIn. We don't know if they're going to hit your resume first. So you have to ask yourself, I can't answer this for you. You have to ask yourself through that lens, if they were to look at your resume only, what are they not learning about you that's over on your LinkedIn? And is that extra stuff over on your LinkedIn really awesome evidence that they would miss if they only looked at your resume? Let me know in the chat. I think you're still here. I thought I saw your name. So I think that's where you need to start. And then if your answer is, oh man, like that stuff on my LinkedIn is actually really relevant and it's not on my resume. Well, then we need to look at your resume. And if it's one page, it's not going to be one page anymore. It's going to be 2 pages. And then it's a matter of looking at each of those bullets and doing what we did in the beginning and trying to think to ourselves, how can I make this more specific? Or maybe some of the bullet points duplicate. We see a lot of times with people's resumes in Career Strategy Lab that they're kind of saying the same thing in 3 bullet points. And once we look at it, we're like, no, that could all just be one bullet point, you know? But Charmaine, I want to see if you replied here. I don't know if you're still here, but that is the strategy behind this and the way that you need to think of it. If they only looked at your LinkedIn, or sorry, they only looked at your resume, what are we missing that's over on your LinkedIn profile? Let's see. I think that's all. Let's see if there's maybe one more. Okay, hold on. Oh, there's Charmaine. You said you have loads of work experience, but cram my last 15 years into my resume. Oh, that's the one we're answering right now. Anyway, Charmaine, I think that helped you. If not, feel free to leave. Oh, you said, I really have so much relevant stuff on my LinkedIn, but I was forced to include only the last 15 years. Lots of transferable skills. So here's what I will close out our day with, because Charmaine, what you said is something that I see a lot. There's a lot of advice out there in UX, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Medium, on everywhere. And a lot of that advice is very opinion oriented. And why is that? Well, there's many reasons, but it's also, I believe, kind of like clickbait factor, right? A lot of people are obsessed with trying to get, as many hearts on their silly LinkedIn posts. So they post some controversial thing like your resume must be one page. That's the law of UX of the day, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. You see this crap all the time. But whenever you see someone say, this is the law of UX, or this is the, rule for your job search or whatever, I would ask yourself, like, what proof does that person have to know that works, right? Because a lot of it is opinion. And I say this, and I'm clearly super passionate about this, but I say this because so many people are out there saying your resume must be one page, or your portfolio must have 3 projects. Each project must be no more than this many words. And it's like, why can your resume only be one page? So, Charmaine, you said you were forced to only include the last 15 years of experience. I would argue if you did something 20 years ago that is hyper relevant to the job you're applying to, I want to know about that. And um, let's leave it at that because I don't want to derail us and like go on a tangent about laws of UX and all this. But I want to see if Charmaine replied to anything at the very end here. Okay, well, let's see. Okay, we're going to go. This has been awesome. Guys, don't forget June 9, next Thursday, we're doing a workshop, and the workshop is all about how to treat your career like a product, because a lot of the mistakes you make root back to the fact that you don't treat your career like a product. You don't have a roadmap for your career, just like products have roadmaps. You jump to design. And we all know what happens when you jump right to design when you're working on a product. Probably doesn't work. You skip over research. You don't think about your users. That's what we're going to cover next week in this Product of You workshop and the Open House for Career Strategy Lab. So if you want to come to that, it's invitation only. You're going to fill out this application. It's free to fill it out. It's free to come to the workshop. And then if you decide you want to join us in Career Strategy Lab, that's awesome. But I'm going to type in the URL. And if you're on LinkedIn, I'm going to verbally say the URL because when I type it in my program I'm in, it doesn't go to LinkedIn. The URL is careerstrategylab.com/workshop. I'll say it again, careerstrategylab.com/workshop. And that's how you're going to be able to join us next Thursday. Also, this Friday, which is the day after tomorrow, we're doing another live stream. So you can join us for that. It's on YouTube and LinkedIn. So just follow me and you'll get an alert. And we're going to talk about why the bar to stand out in your job search is actually super low. And I know this because we do recruiting now, and I can truly say I have seen it all. So that's it for today. I can't wait to see some of you next Thursday. I recognize some of your names, and I'm sure a bunch of you are going to apply after this. So just so you know, it takes us about 1 to 3 days to review your application. So you might not hear back from us until Monday, but we are reviewing them every single day. And then hopefully I'll see you here Friday. So thank you everyone for showing up. This has been super fun. I want to just make sure I saw Charmaine posting. Now I can't find it. I think you said, OMG, thank you so much for saying that. It's become easy and disillusioned with all the advice out there, including me. Exactly. Like, just think to yourself, who is saying this advice? Do they actually like have proof that their advice works, right? If they like just graduated from a UX boot camp and they're posting all these laws of UX and they're still looking for a job, I'm not sure I would follow their laws of like your job search if they're not hired yet, you know? So, all right. This has been awesome. I wish we could keep going, but we all have work to do. So, see you next Thursday, and see you Friday. And I can't wait to read the chat. Okay. Bye, everyone. See you later.